24.
In the quiet rural expanse of Sand Creek Community in Cherokee County, the stillness of the woods hid a secret for years, until human skeletal remains were discovered on the 9th of April 1976. Little is known about the woman who came to rest there, or how long she had been waiting. The remains belonged to a female, likely an adult younger than 50, standing somewhere between 4 foot 9 inches and 5 foot 4 inches. Small in stature but wrapped in mysteries that investigators could never fully unravel. Her bones revealed an unusual detail, an incomplete fusion of the pelvis that might have appeared on any pelvic x-ray she'd once undergone. A silent, unique signature that could have identified her if only someone had recognised it. Her clothes provided only fragments, a pair of gloves and size 6 shoes, worn by feet that had long stopped walking. But it was the jewellery that told the clearest story, pieces that must have meant something to her or to someone she once loved. A white gold ring, a second gold band, and a yellow gold appearing watch. These items were once worn daily, symbols of identity, style or memory. And yet none of them have led to her name. No witnesses, no clear circumstances, no details on how she came to be in those woods. Only the silence of Sand Creek and a woman who still waits to be recognised.
23.
Alabama's back roads carry stories, some whispered, some forgotten, and some buried deep in the pine shadows. But in the summer of 1979, a young woman's life ended along one of these lonely stretches, leaving behind nothing but questions, fear, and a name no one ever discovered. On the 23rd of July, in the quiet countryside outside Tuscaloosa, a mystery began that has never been solved. Her body was found in a remote area near Christown Road and Highway 216, close to Brookwood, the kind of place where the air is still and the sound of passing cars disappears quickly into the trees. What remained of her was already decomposed. Time and heat had taken their toll, but the violence of her death was unmistakable. She had been murdered, stabbed, and investigators believed she had been essayed. The silence of the woods could not hide what had been done to her. She was a black woman, young, just 17 to 25 years old, between 5 foot and 5 foot 3, weighing 105 to 120 pounds. Her hair short and brown, her eyes brown, a face that belonged to someone full of life, perhaps someone travelling, passing through, or trying to leave something behind. One detail stood out among all the others. Her toenails were painted red. A small human touch, a personal choice, perhaps done only hours before everything changed. Her clothing painted the last image anyone would ever have of her. A yellow and white striped long-sleeve blouse, maroon trousers, 2 pairs of panties, and a Playtex 34D bra. Simple clothes, ordinary, and yet they offered no answers, only more questions. Investigators believed she might have come from Jefferson County, possibly Bessemer, or she may have been a hitchhiker moving from place to place, a ghost on the highway long before she disappeared. Some believe she may have been a prostitute, making her even harder to trace, even less likely to be reported missing. Despite extensive media coverage in 1979, no one recognised her. No family stepped forward, no missing persons reports matched her, but one name hovered over the case: Anthony Washington, a man convicted of murdering 2 women in the same region, in the same manner, around the same time. Sharon Williams, a resident of Bessemer, stabbed, her body discarded just a mile from where the unidentified woman was found. And Marilyn Copeland, a hitchhiker, also stabbed, left in the Brookwood woods. All 3 women shared the same final injuries. All 3 were found in the same remote Alabama corridor, and all 3 were last seen near Bessemer. Washington died in prison, never admitting to this crime, never revealing the young woman's identity, never giving investigators the one truth that mattered. So she remained Jane Doe. More than 4 decades have passed since the summer day in 1979, but the young woman found near Brockwood still has no name. Her story, her life, her home, her loved ones, all remain unknown. She may have been travelling, she may have been running, she may have been searching for a new beginning. Instead, she became a mystery the woods have guarded for over 40 years. If you recognise the description, if you remember someone who never came home, her identity may still be waiting to emerge from the shadows. Some stories end in silence, but some deserve to finally be heard.
22.
The Black Warrior River is a place where the water moves quickly, carrying the weight of stories older than memory. But on the 18th of April 1982, its bank held a secret far more recent, a secret of violence, fear, and a woman who would never be identified. She was found along the edge of the river near Foster's, a woman between 30 and 40 years old, white, about 5'4", weighing 110 to 115 pounds. Her hair was dark brown or black, shoulder length, and her eyes, once warm, once alive, were brown, staring silently into a world that had failed her. She bore a scar above her right eye just beneath the eyebrow. Her body revealed signs of a prior pregnancy, and she wore a partial upper denture plate, a detail investigators hoped someone might recognise. Her clothing suggested she had come from the river for something simple, peaceful, maybe fishing, maybe just time alone. She wore a light blue buttoned, preppy brown shirt, blue knit trousers and grey tennis shoes, size 7. Ordinary clothes, ordinary movements. Just moments before everything changed, because her death was not an accident. She had been beaten severely across the head and body, essayed and strangled. Investigators determined she had died only hours before she was discovered. Someone had taken her life with rage and left her alone on the riverbank. But who was she and why here? Police believe she likely wasn't local. No family came forward. No missing persons reports matched her. And despite an extensive investigation, her identity remained elusive. But there was one sighting, one moment in time when she may have been seen alive. 2 days before her death on the 16th of April, witnesses encountered a woman matching her description on Robertson Cemetery Road. She wasn't alone. Her companion was a man, white, about 30 to 40 years old, around 6'1", 180 to 200 pounds, with a ruddy complexion. He was angry. His voice carried across the road, swearing, blaming her. The 1973 or 1974 Ford LTD with a dark vinyl top and possible front-end damage was stuck in the mud. The woman, the one who would later be found by the river, asked the witness for help. The man stayed inside of the car, seething. It was the last time anyone remembered seeing her alive. Investigators never identified that man. No suspect was ever named. Her murder remained cold from the moment her body was laid to rest. On the 9th of December 1982, she was buried in Sunset Memorial Park, her headstone marking a life that no one could claim. The press gave her a name since the world would not, Miss X. The woman who lived a life someone must have known, who died a death someone must have caused, and who now lies beneath Alabama soil, her story unfinished, her truth silent. But somewhere, someone remembers her face. Someone knows her name. And someone, perhaps, still carries the weight of what happened on the banks of the Black Warrior River. Until her identity is known, she remains a whisper in the trees, a shadow on the water, and a mystery waiting for someone, anyone, to bring her home.
21.
On the 3rd of November 1982, a grim discovery was made in the rural backwoods of Lee County. A set of skeletal remains, later determined to belong to a young woman, revealed a deadly crime that had gone unnoticed for far too long. A life stolen, and a story still searching for its ending. The remains were found deep in a secluded wooded area, far from major roads, neighbourhoods, or anyone who might have witnessed what happened. By the time the investigators arrived, the body had been reduced to a skeleton, making the search for clues both urgent and incredibly difficult. There were no personal belongings, no identification, nothing to immediately reveal who she was. But the woman had not died accidentally. She had been shot, a gunshot wound to the abdomen, ending her life. This was murder. Forensic examiners were able to piece together a basic profile. The victim was a black African American woman, estimated to be between 29 and 32 years old. She stood somewhere between 5'9" and 6 feet tall, weighing approximately 135 to 145 pounds, with black hair. The clothing found with her remains was minimal but significant: a white bra and a red and white smock marked 7 to 11. These simple garments offered small but crucial glimpses into her identity. But despite investigators' efforts, no missing person report from that time matched her description. The rural location, isolated and rarely travelled, suggested that someone had chosen this area deliberately. A place where a body could go unnoticed, a place where the truth could remain buried. Detectives searched the surrounding land, hoping for shell casings, footprints, or a sign of the killer. But decades have passed, and no weapon, no suspect, and no motive have ever been publicly identified. She remains unidentified, and her killer remains unknown. Who was this woman from Lee County? Why was she murdered? And who carried her to a rural patch of Alabama woods, leaving her to be found only by chance? Somewhere, someone knew her, someone who noticed when she disappeared, and someone who may still be waiting for answers. If you have any information that could help identify this woman or shed light on what happened to her, please contact your local authorities or Crime Stoppers. Her life mattered, her story matters, and she deserves to have her name returned to her.
20.
On the 5th of November 1983, in the rural stretches of Lee County, authorities discovered the skeletal remains of a woman whose life and death remain shrouded in mystery. Hidden in the woods for nearly a year, she carried only a handful of clues, but enough to paint a haunting picture of her final days. The remains were found off a quiet rural area in Lee County, a place seldom travelled and easily forgotten. By the time investigators arrived, decomposition had long since taken its toll. Only bones remained, along with fragments of clothing and a few small personal items. Nothing about the scene suggested an accident. Someone had left her there, and for nearly a year she lay undiscovered. Forensic examiners determined the deceased was a white female, likely between 30 and 40 years old. She stood approximately 5'8" to 5'9" tall and weighed around 155 to 165 pounds. Her clothing offered some of the clearest details about her identity and perhaps her lifestyle. A blue and brown plaid shirt, Liberty branded bib overalls size 40, white socks, blue tennis shoes tied tightly in double knots. She also wore gold round earrings, simple pieces of jewellery that may once have held sentimental value. And in her front pocket, investigators found a packet of Marlboro cigarettes, a small but human detail that brought her story into focus, if only for a moment. Based on the conditions of the remains, investigators estimated she had been dead for about a year before discovery. Long enough for nature to strip away any forensic evidence, but not long enough to erase the clues she carried with her. Despite these details, no missing person report matched her description. No one ever came forward to identify her, and the circumstances surrounding her death, where she was last seen, who she was with, and what happened remain completely unknown. Who was this woman in the plaid shirt and overalls? Was she passing through? Was she living off the land? Or did someone bring her to this remote area for a reason? Her shoes tied in double knots, her jewellery, the cigarettes in her pocket, they are fragments of a life, but not enough to tell her story. More than 4 decades later, she remains unidentified, and the mystery of how she ended up in the woods of Lee County is as silent as the forest itself. Somewhere, someone knew her name. Someone may still wonder what happened to the woman who never returned home. Every life deserves answers, and every person deserves to be remembered.
19.
On the 10th of October 1984, just off Highway 5 in a small community of Nauvoo, a passerby made a discovery that would open one of Walker County's most haunting mysteries. Hidden only 30 feet from the roadway, in a wooded patch, easily missed by drivers, lay the badly decomposed remains of an unidentified woman. A woman whose story would prove both heartbreaking and deeply mysterious. Authorities arrived quickly, confirming the remains belonged to a woman who had been deceased long enough for decomposition to obscure many crucial details. But what investigators could recover painted a vivid portrait of who she once was, a portrait that still hasn't led to her name. Forensic examiners determined she was a white Caucasian female, estimated to be between 21 and 40 years old, standing at 5'4" to 5'7" tall, and weighing 118 to 130 pounds. She had brown hair and several distinguishing features that should have made identification easier. The most striking were a scar on her lower right abdomen, transverse in shape, and a tattoo on her upper right back, a red heart, the name Brandy inside it, and the date 1/18/80 written beneath. A marking that suggests she was known, loved, or connected to someone named Brandy, yet no missing person report has ever clearly matched her. Her clothing suggested a distinctive style and possibly where she shopped or worked. A white button front long sleeve shirt with red, green, blue and gold vertical stripes labelled stuffed shirt. A white bra size 38D made of 100% nylon assembled in Jamaica. Blue jeans with a waist measurement between 30 and 36 inches with an M stamped on the front button, a tan belt and bikini style underwear. Her jewellery included flat grey round earrings and small rhinestone earrings, distinct items for someone who should have been recognised. Despite the many identifying features, the tattoo, the scar, the clothing, the earrings, investigators found no match in missing person reports locally or across state lines. Why was she only 30 feet from the major highway? Was she left there intentionally, or did she collapse near the road before anyone could see her? And who was Brandy, the name that might have been hers or someone she loved? Her case has remained unsolved for nearly 4 decades. Somewhere, someone knew this woman, someone who may still wonder why she never came home. Her tattoo, her clothing, her jewellery, these were pieces of a life that mattered. Every clue matters, every story deserves closure, and every person deserves their name. On the 30th of March 1986, the small rural community of Marbury became the centre of a chilling mystery. Inside the remains of an old farmhouse, in a dark storm cellar long forgotten, the skeletal remains of a woman were found, remains that had been hidden away for 5 to 6 years. What began as a child's birthday party would end up with the uncovering of a long-buried crime. On the 29th of March, children attending a birthday party wandered around the property in an old residence in Marbury. Curiosity led a few of them to what locals once called a root cellar, a storm shelter type structured beneath the farmhouse. But instead of tools or stored supplies, they found human bones. Authorities were called immediately, and soon the quiet farmhouse became a crime scene. The remains belonged to a white Caucasian female, estimated to be between 35 and 50 years old. She stood between 5 foot 2 inches and 5 foot 6 inches, weighing 110 to 115 pounds. Her brown hair, short and curly, was still partially preserved. One of the most striking details about her was her extensive dental work. A top partial plate with 7 teeth, and her bottom 4th teeth were missing, though it's unknown if she wore a lower partial plate. These dental features could have identified her, yet no match was ever found. Her only known clothing was a halter-neck mesh top decorated with fake rhinestones, hinting at a personal style that someone somewhere should have recognised. This woman had met a violent end. She had been shot multiple times, and investigators found 3 bullets and a spent shell case inside the cellar. Nothing about the burial was accidental. It was deliberate. Someone placed her inside the storm cellar and concealed her, likely believing the crime would never be uncovered. With an estimated 5 to 6 years between her death and discovery, much of the evidence had been lost in time. But the bullets, the casing, and the condition of the cellar made one thing painfully clear. This was murder. Who was this woman? Why was she killed? And who chose the dark, isolated cellar of a quaint farmhouse as her grave? Despite the dental work, the bullets, and the clothing, no missing person case ever matched her. No witnesses ever came forward. No suspect was ever identified. Her killer walked away, and her identity remains unknown. Somewhere she had a name. Somewhere she had a life, and people who once cared for her. Her story deserves answers, and she deserves her name back.
17.
On the 3rd of February 1990 in Birmingham, a young boy wandered into the yard of an abandoned home. The kind of place where childhood curiosity often leads. But this time his curiosity uncovered something far darker than old furniture or forgotten belongings. He found a piece of human life. The boy was exploring the neglected property when he noticed something pale lying near the foundation. At first it must have looked like a stone or part of a broken object, but as he picked it up the truth became unmistakable. It was a portion of a human mandible. Startled, he alerted adults who then contacted the police. Authorities quickly responded, securing the area surrounding the abandoned home. A full search of the property was conducted, drawers opened, soil sifted, brush cleared. But despite the thorough effort, no additional human remains were found. No skull, no bones, no clothing, just a single fragment of a jaw. So with little to work with, investigators were left with almost no clues. Who did the mandible belong to? How long had it been there? And how did it end up on the property of a deserted house? Was this evidence of a past crime, a body moved, or something else entirely? The lack of additional remains left every possibility open and offered no clear direction. No missing person report was ever definitively matched to the mandible. No cause of death could be determined, and no further evidence was ever recovered. One small piece of bone remains the only trace of life and an identity that has yet been uncovered. Even the smallest detail could bring answers to a mystery untouched for more than 3 decades.
16.
On the 9th of April 1990, in the small town of Riverside, a heartbreaking discovery was made behind an apartment building. Inside a dumpster at the Riverbend Apartments, the life of a newborn girl, a life only hours old, came to a tragic and devastating end. It was around 1:30 p.m. when a person collecting recyclables lifted the lid of the dumpster, expecting to find cans or cardboard. Instead, they noticed 2 garbage bags that seemed out of place and far too heavy. When they opened them, what they found stopped them cold. Inside one bag was the body of a newborn infant girl, in the other her umbilical cord. She had been born only 6 to 8 hours earlier, no more than a day old. Weighing just 7 pounds, she had barely entered the world before her life was taken away. The infant was identified as a white female, newly born with no clothing, no identification, nothing to indicate who she belonged to or why she had been left there. A medical examination revealed the cause of death: suffocation. This was not a case of natural causes. It was not an accident. It was murder. Detectives canvassed the apartments, speaking with residents, gathering evidence, and trying to determine who had given birth shortly before the discovery. But with no immediate witnesses and no cameras in 1990, the investigation was challenging from the start. Was the baby born inside one of the apartments? Was she delivered elsewhere and left here intentionally? And why was her life taken only hours after it began? Despite exhaustive efforts, no one ever identified the mother. No leads connected the infant to a missing or hospitalized woman, and the person responsible for her death was never found. This newborn girl, unnamed, unclaimed, and unknown, entered the world under circumstances we may never fully understand. But someone knows what happened. Someone knows who gave birth on or before the 9th of April 1990, and someone knows why that child ended up in a dumpster. Decades later, the case remains one of Alabama's most heartbreaking unsolved murders. Even the smallest detail could finally bring truth and dignity to a life that was never given a chance.
15.
On the 22nd of September 1995, just south of Meridianville, a man searching for land to purchase wandered into a wooded area off Baltimore Hill Road. What he found beneath the trees, approximately 150 feet from the road, would reveal a mystery that has haunted Madison County for nearly 3 decades. While walking the property, the man noticed something unusual scattered on the forest floor. At first, it appeared to be debris or animal remains, but he looked closer. He realized the truth. They were human remains. Police were called immediately, and investigators arrived to secure the area. Based on decomposition, they estimated the remains had been there for around 2 months, exposed to the elements, waiting for someone to find them. The deceased was a female between 32 and 42 years old, of white or possibly Asian descent. She stood between 5'2" and 5'6", with light brown or blonde hair, measuring about 6 inches long. One unique detail stood out to investigators. She had a healed fracture of the nose, a distinctive feature that may once have been noticeable in life. Her clothing provided additional clues. Clothing found included blue Lee jeans size 6M, a reddish short-sleeved blouse with large pink buttons labelled Touche LA, white ankle socks, and white and blue-green Reebok high-top tennis shoes size 10. These items suggested she may have been dressed for warmer weather, possibly early summer, before her disappearance. Despite her clothing, her healed injury, and her distinctive appearance, investigators struggled to match her to any missing person report. No ID was found, no jewellery, no personal belongings, just the remains of a woman whose story had vanished with her. The wooded area where she was found, isolated, quiet, and shielded from traffic, raised difficult questions. Had she walked there? Was she brought there? And did someone hope her remains would never be found? Her identity remains unknown, and her cause of death was never publicly confirmed. But circumstances, an isolated location, no belongings, and a body left for months suggested that her final moments may not have been accidental. Somewhere there may still be family members who wondered why she disappeared, friends who never got answers, and a community unaware that their missing loved one was left in a wooded patch just north of Huntsville. Every life has a story, and every story deserves to be told and remembered.
14.
Bessemer, a place built on steel, sweat, and southern quiet. But in 1988, that quiet was broken when 2 unsuspecting fishermen uncovered a mystery that has remained unsolved for decades. A mystery belonging to a woman who left behind only fragments and no name. On the 19th of February 1998, along the banks of Shades Creek, 2 individuals walked into thick brush, searching for a good fishing spot. but instead they found skeletal remains hidden approximately 25 feet from the water, swallowed by overgrown vegetation. The area was isolated, dense brush on one side and across the road, a steel fabrication building humming with the noise of machinery. But none of it disturbed the silence where she had been laying, waiting to be found. The remains belonged to a white woman estimated to be between 60 and 100 years old, standing around 5'2". Her clothing spoke louder than any records ever did. A lady's slip trimmed in lace around the collar, a wraparound apron decorated with intersecting blue lines, simple, worn, familiar, a single sock and eyeglasses, possibly the pair she relied on every day. These items paint the outline of a life, yet none of them reveal her name. Authorities searched for missing persons who matched her age, her stature, her clothing, but no match was ever found. There were no signs of recent disturbance, no obvious clues about how she ended up hidden in the brush. No known family stepped forward, no report connected her to this lonely stretch of land. It was as if she simply vanished from her world and reappeared here, quietly, anonymously, and without explanation. More than 2 decades later, she remains unidentified. A woman once loved, once known, now reduced to a mystery whispered by the creek that kept her secret. Some mysteries fade, but some wait patiently for someone, anyone, to finally bring them to light.
13.
On the 18th of October 2000, surveyors working in a wooded stretch of Birmingham were marking out a future sewer line when they made an unexpected and deeply unsettling discovery. Hidden in the trees, separated from nearby housing by 2 sets of railroad tracks, lay the partial skeletal remains of a woman whose identity still remains unknown. The team of surveyors had been making their way through thick brush, documenting the path for upcoming construction. But as they advanced deeper into the wooded area, something unusual caught their attention on the forest floor. At first, it looked like scattered debris, but as they moved closer, the truth became clearer. These were human remains. Police were immediately notified, and soon the quiet woodland became the site of a forensic investigation. Examiners determined the remains belonged to an Asian female, estimated to be between 25 and 49 years old, standing around 5'5" tall. Though the remains were partial, some of her clothing and belongings were preserved, enough to provide valuable clues. The clothing found included light-coloured underwear with purple trim, a dark blue sock, blue jeans, and Nike ankle-high shoes. Her jewellery included a gold-coloured ring set with 4 clear stones and a unique mixed silver and gold ring featuring a clear metal stone with a starburst-like ornamental design. She also carried a few personal items, a pair of eyeglasses, a handmade key ring crafted from red and tan cord tied in 3 knots, and 6 keys attached to the key ring. Small details, but meaningful ones, hinting at who she may have been in life. The location itself raised immediate questions. This wooded area was isolated, cut off from the Cooper Green housing project by not 1 but 2 sets of railroad tracks. This secluded place, easy to reach unnoticed and even easier to disappear into. Forensic teams searched the surrounding area, but no additional remains were recovered. The cause of death could not be determined, and no missing person report at the time matched her description. Her rings, her handmade keyring, her clothing, all clues with no clear answers. Who was this woman? Why was she found so far from public view, in an area only surveyors or local workers might ever access? And how long had she been there before being discovered? Her belongings suggest someone with a distinct personal style, someone who mattered to someone, yet more than 2 decades later, her identity remains a mystery. Somewhere, there may still be a family member wondering why their loved one never came home. Someone missing a daughter, a sister, a friend. Even after all these years, her story deserves closure, and her name deserves to be known.